Buen día, mi nombre es César.
Good morning. I'm Cesar Belloso. I'm welcoming you in this August 27th day in Aapresid Congress. We will have a panel with the participation of Carola Andrada and Carola Schuten and Fernando Andrada. During the presentation, you can ask and start writing questions in the panel you have to the right of the screen. Then we will ask the questions to speakers. In the top part of the main website, there is a section called Participant. There you will be able to identify speakers and you will be able to chat and arrange meetings with them. And Espacio Aapresid space in the commercial hall, you will be able to watch interviews with the experts and other contents. And to follow what happens in the social media, use the hashtag Congreso Aapresid. I will introduce the speakers as they appear. First, Fernando Andrado. He's an agronomist, a graduate from the UVA. He is a researcher in CONOCET. He has a chair in agricultural science in the Mar del Plata University. He has led several PhD courses and CONICET research, and he also participated in several research teams around the country. He has published more than 100 public papers and 7 books. He has received awards and distinctions, the Fundación Conex Award and the Clarín Rural 2008 prize, another award in 2011, also awards and prizes for national academies. He is professor in the INTA 2014. Carola Schouten is the Vice Minister of Agriculture in the Netherlands and food quality. He comes from the southern part of the Netherlands, and he attended a course of study of business administrations in the Rotterdam University. She also worked in the Ministry of Social Affairs. Right now, she's a member of the parliamentary group, and he's about to become a House representative. I'll give the floor to Fernando Andrada. I will talk about the challenges of agriculture. What are the challenges that we face? The increase of production in the past have been associated with higher environmental impacts. The challenge that we are facing today is to meeting the future demand as we see in the gray bars, but also to take care of environmental impact as we show in the red bars. We have to guarantee conservation, recovery, and sustainable use of agriculture and ecosystems. My estimations indicate that future demand of crop food will increase 47% from 2010 and 2050. This shows that there will be 47% demand increase. If we were all vegetarian by 2050, the increase in demand would be 0%. So what we produce today will be enough. But we all have a diet typical of rich countries. We should double food production by 2050. In the right, at the if we reduce food waste, increase in demand by 2050 will be only 20%. This shows how important diet and waste, how important are diet and waste. We are going to present some of the variables of environmental impact. Greenhouse emissions produce global warming. In the left, we see the temperature throughout the centuries and the heat peak that happened after the Industrial Revolution. And this is a threat for food production. because aridity increases and ice melts and the sea level also changes, and this poses serious problems for mankind. There are heat stresses and there is a change in the river systems or in rainfall as well. Another problem is deforestation. Right now, 7 million hectares per year are under deforestation. Argentina is number 9 in deforestation surface area. Why this is a bad thing? Because it produces greenhouse emissions effects, it produces biodiversity loss and water excess, which causes flooding, erosion, pollution, and salinization. Another problem is pollution. In the year, 4 million active principles is used globally. The application per hectare is of formulations is 9 kilograms per hectare around the world. In Argentina, this is double because of chemical fallow. So we are promoting the appearance of resistant weeds. 200 million tons of fertilizers is used, NPK. In Argentina, you use less of the world average. We use 120 kilos per hectare uh, worldwide, and in Argentina, only 50. The problem is the low recovery of nutrients. 9 million tons of phosphorus flow into the seas from urban centers, and every year we extract 121 millions of inert nitrogen, and we transform it in the biosphere in active nitrogen through different processes. So we are exceeding the thresholds of planetary safety. 5 million hectares per year are degraded at the global level. The reasons are erosion, desertification, soil degradation, acidification, salinization. In Argentina, 45 million hectares are impacted by erosion. No-till stopped to a certain extent these processes, but it has to be supported by other practices to be more effective. The map in the left shows the shaded areas are the most critical regarding erosion globally. In Argentina, this graph shows this is has been prepared by the Valcarce experimental station, how erosion developed. The original level of 4% has been brought down to 3% due to agriculture and the lack of replacement of nutrients. And also there is a change in the level of phosphorus sinks and exchange of cations. Regarding blue water, Argentina uses 70% of extractions of blue water from rivers and lakes. In the world, 4,000 cubic meters are extracted annually. In Argentina, we use it only for 5% of our crops, which is lower than what happens around the world. In Argentina, we use 4.3% of the available renewable water resources. This is lower than the world average, and in other regions in the world, this value is very, very high. Water is a scarce resource, and it will compete also with other uses, which is the household uses and industrial uses. We are meeting the goals that we have proposed in 2010. Are we meeting those goals? From the productive point of view, we are. In this graph, we see how linear projections of the estimations we did in 2010. These are the predictions for 2015. By the production data are above these linear proposal. So we are meeting that needs. But from the environmental point of view yes, from environmental point of view, we are not meeting the needs. This includes use of water, GAG, see that as regards pesticides and water extraction, there is a deceleration. So the challenge is to meet future demands, taking care of environment, and also try to achieve an equitable development. In order to meet these demands, uh, we should not increase planted area. We need to achieve better yields um, by time unit and area unit, but we have to put the emphasis in technologies that are more efficient in the use of resources and inputs and have a lower environmental impact. These challenges require innovation. If we protect innovation, eh, innovation is unavoidable, unpredictable, accumulative, exponential, and disruptive. It is unavoidable because it is inherent for mankind. It is unpredictable because it is very difficult to have an equation. It's cumulative because it is a sort of a gear work, um, and it is exponential and disruptive because the products of our innovations has a positive feedback on our capacity. What are the technologies for a sustainable production? We have lots of them, but we will have to think of new ones. We have the hard technology as breeding and a new technology, a novel technology, this robot, which includes several technologies at the same time: robotics, IT, sensors, satellite, solar energy. But I want to emphasize those process and knowledge technologies in order to meet our sustainability goal, to get to know the environment, the pest, and the complex interactions among the system components, the implementation of rotations, crop management, pasture management. This are low-cost technologies. They require training. The benefits can be achieved, and we can utilize this. We can take advantage of this novel technology. The examples for this are conservationist agriculture, rotations, ecophysiological management, agriculture by environment, cover crops, nutrient recirculation, integrated pest manager. In the past few years, Argentine agriculture had made progress because it improved the proportion of grass crops in rotations. Sequences have been intensified, cover crops that gives us services as weed control, nitrogen fixation, carbon contribution, agriculture by environment, and ecophysiological management, and this improved water use efficiency. Also, we have other challenges. We need collaboration. Bringing together research, extension, and community is something important to have societies that learn through the feedback of the players. Regarding innovation in this formula, we see at the bottom, interaction has and the general effect is more than the individual effect of each element. And this is expressed uh, by our group. We are at the global level a great group. We are facing problems. We have a common origin, and the solution of these complex problems require a joint action. In these books, you will find details on my presentation. You can download that from internet.
Estimados,
Damas y caballeros,
thanks for inviting me in by video. 2 years ago, when the G20 took place in Buenos Aires, I was lucky to shake hands in real life with you. I met ministers, producers, people of the National Institute of Agriculture, Technology, and of course, Alejandro Petec. I quickly concluded how much we could learn from you. I also have vivid recollections of my conversation with 4 young farmers. They were highly dedicated to secure the future of Argentina, and they radiated pure passion. It was contagious. I remember your stories on how geography and regional conditions have worked for food production in Argentina. Experts pictured no-till farming techniques and sophisticated methods for precision farming. They illustrated how your soil maintains nutrients and how organic residues are being reused, thus merging nature's processes and food production. It struck me how your vast pastures can turn into great carbon sinks. These faculties are highly relevant since we all take immense efforts to meet the Paris agreements, and they put you ahead in circular agriculture. In return, some of you paid a visit to my country. You met scientists from Wageningen University and research, those in search of new practices and technologies for circular agriculture. And I hope you will continue to take joint paths. In the Netherlands, many people joined forces. Circular agriculture is to be the leading method for food production by 2030. A short recap.
The Netherlands is a leader in agriculture, horticulture and fisheries. We get maximum yields from limited resources. We continuously strive for better results. We are quick to adopt innovative insights and technologies. Our entire food system is geared towards innovation from start to finish. Farmers, growers and fishermen work together with companies specialized in transport, packaging and processing, the hospitality industry and supermarkets. They have expert knowledge gained through close ties with research institutions and high-quality agricultural education. But the system is reaching a breaking point. We can see that happening around us. We can see it in the changing landscape. The climate is changing too. We're getting more periods of extreme drought and extreme rainfall. So we're either dealing with huge volumes of water or hardly any at all. Nature is under threat. Plant and animal species are becoming extinct. Fewer people are becoming farmers, growers or fishermen. The way in which we currently produce our food isn't sustainable any longer. So we must make the transition to a food system that doesn't harm nature, the environment, the soil and the climate. A system of farming and fisheries in which nothing is wasted. A system in which farmers and fishermen work with other companies to turn their waste into new products. Locally if possible, regionally or internationally where necessary. This is called circular agriculture. For example, sugar beet leaves can be fed to cattle. The transition to circular agriculture has already started, but it will only succeed if between now and 2030 we achieve success in 3 areas. If farmers, growers and fishermen get a fair price for their products, and there are good prospects for the next generation. If people again hold farmers, growers and fishermen in esteem and know what's involved in producing food, so that they can appreciate their food more and try to waste less. And if the Netherlands is ready to take on a leading role globally to improve food production methods. In 2019, we will make agreements on results with government bodies, companies and civil society organizations. And we'll continue to invite other people, businesses and organizations to share ideas and take initiatives, some of which we will support through funding or better regulations. We work on the basis of trust, and we stand side by side with people, businesses and organizations.
Before we agreed to realize this major shift, very diverse people in the field of food and nature had amply discussed the future of food production and nature protection during discussions and meetings. The question on many minds was how to break free from that detrimental dependency on realizing high revenues at the lowest cost. Opinions clashed frequently, but in the end, participants agreed that circular agriculture was a solution in favor of farmers and fishermen, life on Earth, and the generations to come. Of course, huge efforts would be needed, and not just in the Netherlands. In a nation like ours, one instinctively knows there is a bigger picture to paint. It was helpful somehow that circular agriculture was already practiced on a smaller scale. So we had this shared view. Then the corona crisis arrived. Things got misty. And corona, she has siblings. Sea levels keep rising. In the last few summers, droughts start to endanger our watery country. We have less land for food production. Biodiversity declines. And Dutch farmers are being asked to reduce nitrogen due to a harmful excess of nitrogen compounds in our land. The global family of crisis encourages us to be inventive, all the more. Meanwhile, farmers rise up against politicians and food companies. Social media register a lot of harsh words. As uncertainty and insecurity take the upper hand, empathy loses out. But remember the direction. Circular agriculture is a long-term quest, not a quick method. There's no silver bullet to be found in research or techniques alone. Solutions come from what binds us together, and the toughest of conditions can teach us how to better pave our path. There's much, much more we could do to facilitate the learning process. We could reach out for new or unusual partners. We could learn. As for me, I'm very keen to learn how you mine or manage your data, how precision farming is implemented, and how do you register the nitrogen and carbon storage in your pampas? How do you calculate this? We love to hear all of your ideas, and we are, of course, motivated to share ours with you. Please do not hesitate to ask our team what lessons we drew from our new practices, or how we now deal with water, a saline environment, or precision farming. Let's also involve our personal values, strivings and passions, like the courage to face uncertainties or differences, the willingness to rethink the familiar, or to act more wisely for the future. And if you want to learn some more on circular agriculture in the Netherlands, just get in contact with our Argentinian-based team and Mrs. Leontine Crisson, our counselor. Or download our original vision in Spanish from the Congress website. I wish you a wonderful continuation of your Congress, and I hope you will continue to strengthen ties across the globe. They are in our best interest. Nature will benefit, and so will our children and grandchildren. Hasta luego.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Minister, for your presentation. Unfortunately, she won't be able to be present in the Q&A because she has a busy agenda, but those of you who want to have more information about what the situation is in Holland, we are having in another room today presentations about family agriculture in Holland. We will ask questions to Fernando's, and we will try to exchange and to compare the visions or the views in Argentina and what the minister from the Netherlands said about circular agriculture. some things match to what Fernando said. The first question, Fernando, based on your presentation, is it compatible to meet future demands and protect the environment based on what the information you gave to us? Regarding that, I showed you a figure that shows that in time, a chart, a production increase were accompanied or were at the same time followed by environmental damage. So as we meet that needs, we estimate what is the environmental damage. Carola's presentation was in line with this need to distribute or to avoid environmental damage. It's achievable. It's a harder challenge, but we can achieve it. That's why it is important not to increase the planted area. The increase in planted area is associated with greenhouse gases, to degradation processes and water excess. So this should be done by intensifying production by time or surface area unit and supporting with good inputs and good practices, but we need to use technologies that allow us to increase the efficient use of inputs and reduce environmental impact. We have some hard technologies, plant breeding or biotechnology in general. But I want to put an emphasis in process technologies, knowledge-based, knowledge of the environment, of the pastures, of pest biology that guide production processes, soil management, rotation, pastures, integrated pest manager. And a message to close this question, to complete this question, is that we have to be open-minded. This technology that has to do to meet demands and separate that from environmental impact, we need to analyze technologies without any bias. We have to consider them individually. Along the same line, the next question asks, do you think specifically that Argentina is making progress in separating, meeting the agricultural needs and protected environment? And what are the policies that might support or promote this urgent need that you have just mentioned? I was lucky enough to collaborate with Emilio Satorre in a paper that was published in Ciencia Hoy magazine. And there's a lot of information about the changes in Argentine agriculture in the past 15 years, at the turn of the century until 2018. And progress has been made in Argentina regarding processes and knowledge. Argentina is aware of conservationist agriculture, soil management. Aapresid shows this. So this stopped erosion and degradation in soils, but this should also be supported by other practices, rotations, cover crops, etc. Regarding rotations, an improvement have been seen. Grass crops, the proportion of grass crops increased in rotation in Argentine agriculture. The surface area planted with corn increased by 2.2%. The more crops we have, more radiation or more sunlight is captured, and there is a higher water use efficiency, so we avoid water excess. And new things that are being introduced have to do with cover crops. They provide services as nitrogen fixation. They provide carbon to the soil, and they help controlling weeds. So we see a lot of progress, but we are making a lot of progress with this. Regarding crop management, we have been able to stable corn yields, implementing a seed rate, or considering seeding dates, and this is stabilized the production of corn, implementing delayed planting, and also we made changes in the crop periodic or critical period. Another example I always mention is precision agriculture, but especially agriculture by environment. We, with Pablo Calviño, made a trial on this, identifying homogeneous paddocks depending on topography, separating them by frost and water availability. So each place needs a specific rotation and a specific crop management. Different environments require different practices, and this has increased productivity significantly, and it also improved the availability of resources. But this is a whole process that has to be completed. Also, recirculation, this idea of agriculture, the circular agriculture, the recirculation of biomass, that's something more complicated for us because we export a significant amount of what we produce in faraway places. Therefore, recirculation is not that viable. And finally, pest integrated management. We are making slow progress, but we are progressing. We are also using this concept of precision spraying because we make a more efficient use of pesticides, for example. This contributes to improvement, and there is an interest in the community for this model, which leads us to achieve a more sustainable production.
And Fernando, to talk a little bit about circular agriculture, which, as we know, is based on 3 pillars: reduction of inputs, reduction of emissions, and finally, reusing and adding value to the byproducts coming out of production. Based on what you have said and based on what we have heard at this Aapresid meeting, in the first 2 areas, Argentina is a leader because tilling, which is one of the most important factors that produces a greenhouse gas effect together with nitrogen excess, Argentina uses less nitrogen than the rest of the world. Tillage, though tillage is reduced by 90% in a non-till agriculture. There are still some farmers using till, but much of the system is already in use in Argentina. What do you think about our performance in the third area, that is reusing the waste trained in production? Because in the case of the Netherlands, of course, if we compare this, the surface in Santa Fe is 3 times larger than the Netherlands. So Argentina, because of its large scale, well, makes it difficult to achieve this third pillar. And sometimes this is also due to the lack of policies that support or drive this. What do you think about this? I agree with what you have just said. Agriculture in Argentina is very efficient regarding the use of inputs, limited fertilizers. Some fertilizers in some areas use more fertilizers than others. The amount of energy of fossil fuels used in production is quite low, and this goes hand in hand with non-till approaches. The area where we still have some work to do regarding the first part of your question, inputs and greenhouse effects. Inputs, it's a point of the issue of pesticides instead the issue of our cultivars and chemical fallow. We have to invest a lot in research and innovation there in order to bring down those values which are higher than the worldwide average regarding pesticides per hectare, but they are not higher than the Netherlands because where they use a lot of pesticides. You mentioned the added value. I was listening to Carola's presentation, and in order to get ready to this Q&A session, I read something more about the circular agriculture, which is quite a new issue for me. We have been talking a lot about circular economy, but now we are talking about circular agriculture, where when we see that the waste of the fields of farming or of food production are used for animal feed, and those residues from animal that are produced by animals are used as manure, and the manure is used to produce more crops or corn. This is part of the circular agriculture. Use of waste, added value, reducing environmental impact. It's quite a strong message. It's a very interesting goal. The point is that, well, the Netherlands have quite a good integration between the food production industry, animal and plant production, and the population. Everything is close to everything else and quite integrated. However, production is more intensive and more stable. As it's intensive, they have high levels of irrigations, they use lots of input, so it's a good scenario to use technology. They also have subsidies which foster the development of technologies and the use of technologies, and besides, there is a stability in public policies there. All that creates a better framework for this leap forward, which is towards circular agriculture. We have issues of logistics. Our country is much larger. The cities are further away from rural areas. There isn't so much integration between farm and animal production, and we have extensive farming practices with yields that vary quite a bit, and there are not stable public policies, and this does not foster the use of such technologies or of this approach. This is what I could say in general terms. I don't know if this is what you asked about. Well, you're okay. And we wanted to start talking about circular economy. There are some terms that have different meanings depending on the productive system in which they are used. You talked about intensification in the Netherlands, and you mentioned inputs. animal production, irrigation in a small country, but it's clear that intensification has a negative impact because of the tillage. There were more activities, is more tillage, so more harm to the soil. And one of the main aims of circular agriculture is to protect the soil. And the results of Argentina, though there is a massive adoption of this because of the issues you mentioned, the fact that we lack public policies that foster diversity and intensity in non-till systems. There is very interesting information. For example, in our region, in some plots where there's more diversity and intensity in rotations, the use of pesticides and fungicides has been cut by 50%. This can also be seen in ratios related to toxicity, to mammals and insects. So I believe that there is a great chance of communicating and spreading this. And the minister mentioned this when she said that she had a lot to learn from us. But first, we have to be convinced ourselves that circular economy has already started, and there is evidence dating back 30 years from systems, production systems, where there has been a reduction in the use of inputs, more intensity with non-till, with improvements in the soil conditions. And of course, we know that we have to think that as we have such a large territory, we should see how we could add value and recycle in the closest areas so as to become a clear witness or a clear piece of evidence of circular economy. This was just something I wanted to add because it's really good to think aloud with a very intelligent person next to us. In Argentina, there's a lot of research and research in process technology. Shouldn't be focused on technology transfer. Shouldn't research institutes and universities work harder with the farmers? And my additional question would be, what is the academia doing to support farmers or professionals so that they may have a system view? Well, the model that Carola shared with us that I showed in my last slides is the innovation-based model. Early on, we had the innovation-based model related to the science driving after World War II. This was the main model: research, knowledge, science, driving, innovation. But very often, the results of the research did not meet the needs of society or of production. There is a second innovation model, however, where demand pulls. Well, so research meets demand, but if we just meet demand, we will be late. We will always be late. We need strong scientific work so as to quickly meet the demands, quickly and effectively. So it's not just science driving or demand pulling. There has to be an interaction between research, outreach, community, farmers, politicians, lawmakers, so that together they make up groups that learn. So the information and technology transfer is key. In Argentina, we have a long-standing tradition. INTA has an outreach system that is really brilliant. We have to work hard on creating these relationships between research and outreach, and through organizations such as Aapresid, Acrea, there is a lot of coordination between research and outreach. I have learned about many examples. We have participated in some cases. For example, the system of Aapresid farms, where we see research working with outreach, and we see farmers participating here to how some of these pieces of research become dissertations of students at universities. So there's a virtuous interaction between actors and disciplines. This is key because the issues we face are complex. It's not just an isolated issue. We need a systems approach, and we have a long way to go here. We have seen changes at the universities. They use a system approach, but we still have a long way to go here. But I believe we have made some progress. I can see that farmers associations and researchers from universities and from INTA are working closely together, increasingly closely together. And there are territorial development systems where the focus is on joint innovation. And we have to learn about this. But we learn as we move along. We learn by doing. We have to make up these groups that learn together. And this is done by doing. And we shouldn't forget about robust quality research, which is key to achieve innovation. Well, crystal clear, Fernando. Why do you think that Argentina, there is still deforestation instead of reducing the gaps between what we produce today and the possible yields of our farms or farming plots? Well, it's clear that the world has to move towards intensification of farming, and because of all the reasons we have already mentioned and that Carola has mentioned in her presentation, because of biodiversity, greenhouse gases, soil degradation, water excess or water surplus, which is becoming an issue here too, where we have to increase production per surface area. But we need a regulatory framework. I'm not an expert in this field. The Forests Act should be used to stop deforestation, and it's not working in Argentina. In the world, at the beginning of the 20th century, deforestation started to decrease, but now it's speeding up again. So we need regulations, territorial organization, and based on that territorial organization, we should improve incentivization per acreage using the technologies that help us to become sustainable or increase sustainability. I switch gears and let's talk about biodiversity. There is a question here related to the natural shelters in the agro ecosystems and whether that may be harmful as if it were a contradiction, because shelters may become shelters for pests too. What do you think about natural shelters as part of agro ecosystems? Well, the corridors are key to protect biodiversity and so as to check on natural enemies. Contradiction, I don't get your point, but it's shelters are a necessary tool. If we think about our production systems, many of the techniques related to green principles that are process technologies related to agroecology, well, it's very difficult to achieve what we want if we don't have those corridors. The in some cases, the system is too uniform. We don't have too many people working in the rural areas. This is another problem which I have already mentioned. And process technologies need lots of care, control, and presence. So I believe these shelters are a strategy to achieve biodiversity, which leads to natural pest control.
I agree with you, Fernando. And I relate this to what you said before. As we have a higher intensification in production systems, we will have more crop diversity in the same area. So the plot management will create biological corridors or conservation areas for different predators, unlike other crops. But for that, we need to massify systems, which sometimes happens, but it's not these practices are not predominant in general. There are other things, tax pressure, infrastructure problems, lack of planning, but this is another story. Well, I would stop here. We have to connect with the next presentation. I want to thank the minister for sending her video in spite of the busy agenda she has. And thank you, Fernando, to open your thoughts and share your view with us. Thank you very much. We continue participating